homeless really became visible in the early 80s, and that was a result of losing so many low-income hotels that were all around downtown, like the Vesters, the Merchants, the Sam Davis, the Hermitage was renovated, and with all of that gone, then homeless people had no other place to go, where previously they were able to stay for 3 weeks in one of these cheaper hotels, and then the fourth week their check would run out and they would have to leave. Now they had no place to go at all. Homelessness has grown. Back when we were doing the first counts back in the 1980s, there were 1,200 homeless, but our area was a little bit smaller. Today there are 2,200. Of the 2,200 that we find on a given night, and this is a cold night in January when this count is done, and it's highly orchestrated with a lot of volunteers, almost 500 people are found outside, not inside one of the shelters or a halfway house, but outside in the elements on a January night. There are a number of different homeless camps scattered around the kind of the perimeter of downtown Nashville, sometimes even inside the downtown areas underneath the bridges. There are people that sleep in parking lots. There are people that sleep on the sidewalks. I'm sure y'all have seen those. A lot of them are in shelters on the cold night, but then there are many different hidden places that people stay. There are probably 3 different arenas of homelessness, and that the people that are very transient, because we know in a given year 12,000 people will come through, unduplicated people will come through the homeless system. So if you have 2,000 on a given night and 12,000 over a given year, there's a lot of coming and going. So you see a lot of people that are here a couple of days and then they move on. Then you have a population that is what you might call our homeless population, that is going to stay in Nashville, has been in Nashville a long time, and they will remain homeless in Nashville. And then you have the third population, which is the population that actually takes advantage of the homeless service system, because there are services out there and there are ways to get out of homelessness if you avail yourself and follow those guidelines. It's difficult to build housing for homeless people. Generally, it requires a zoning change, and a zoning change requires a public hearing. People that live next door into the neighborhood don't want homeless people living in their neighborhood. Therefore, it's almost impossible to get the zoning change required to build housing for homeless people. It is so expensive to acquire the land or the property that it makes it just unfeasible to be able to house homeless people in. Right now in Nashville, there are about 130 units that are permanent housing units for the homeless. And those units are constantly filled, and in fact there's a 60-unit waiting list for people trying to get in, and it's growing every day.
We've lost so much low-income housing. A lot of homeless people work. A lot of people work, and even with them working every day, they don't have enough money to even get into some of the houses, if it's available. A lot of people don't want homeless people in their neighborhood, so they don't have any place to go now. As they're being pushed out from downtown, they're going to more of the suburb areas. So again, there's problems. When you're mentally ill, sometimes people kind of overlook you, may not want to house you, maybe because you have some acted out behavior or whatever. A lot of times when they get off their medicine, they may be hard to manage sometimes. But that's a growing population. I guess when I interview people, if I interview, say, 10 in a week, I would say 6 of them have mental health issues. So it's a growing concern.
In the 1950s, we began to develop new drugs for treatment of illnesses like schizophrenia and depression. And as a result of those drugs, a movement to move people out of the back wards of state hospitals evolved. And by the early 1980s, there was no longer the capacity in those state hospitals to hold lots and lots of people. Very quick short-term treatment evolved. People went into the hospital and then back out essentially onto the streets. It's a major contributor to the burst of homelessness that we saw in the early 1980s. Directly observed treatment is the approach of choice. We don't have the resources to do that for all the people who need it. Historically in this country, there have been waves of homelessness that have followed every major war, from the Revolution on. World War II was mitigated some by the GI Bill, but then in Korea to some extent, certainly in Vietnam, and we're seeing it increasingly in Iraq, people come home wounded, mentally wounded from wars as well as physically disabled. They too, over a period of time, burn out their family connections, their support systems, and often end up homeless.
The most recent development in Nashville is the beginning of the Metropolitan Homelessness Commission. And what that commission is doing is trying to formulate a local response, a governmental response to homelessness, but with very, very limited funding.
And you think that you might not be homeless, you can. If you have one breadwinner in your family, or if you have two breadwinners in your family, a major catastrophe like a fire, an illness can cripple a family, and they can be homeless. One of the things is that people thought that homelessness would go away, but it's just like the healthcare problem now we're dealing with. Homeless didn't go away. It leaves people's lives. They do deserve a better quality of life.